Jimmy Petruzzi, part of the team, will do a quick introduction for those of you that haven't met us before. So as I said, I'm Sarah Luann Jones. You've probably received an email from me, or two or three, at some point. This is Jimmy Petruzzi, another one of our trainers at the NLP Centre of Excellence. And we have Ignacio over here, all the way over from Spain, who works with us as well. So if any of you have any questions at the end of the evening, do feel free to come and ask us. We'll be hanging around for quite a while as well. So Jimmy's going to take you through the techniques. Okay, then.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to be gentle because the speaker system, the audio system's gone down, so I'm going to speak without the microphone, so you have to listen very, very clearly. I'll speak in my clearest voice, and I'll make sure that I keep my accent neutral as possibly can. We're going for a special treat this evening. It's going to be a phenomenal evening. Breakthrough coaching, fantastic evening. It's good to see you all. I'm glad you could all come down and enjoy the evening. It's going to be a very thought-provoking, mind-blowing seminar. Very action-packed. If you take one thing away at the end of it, then it's a positive, but I'm sure you'll take more than one thing away. Breakthrough coaching process I've used for many, many years with some very high-level elite athletes and footballers, business people, people in the arts, in the media, to help them focus and channel their energies to where they want to be, to help people fulfill their potential. So during the seminar, I'm going to keep it very interactive, so everyone can get involved. You can deploy these techniques for yourself, or alternatively, you can use them with somebody else. They're very powerful strategies. But before we begin, for those of you who haven't met me before, I'll tell you a little about myself. I won't go on for too long because I'm probably the only person interested in my own story. So a bit about myself. I first came across this technology many, many years ago, when I was about 16, 17 years of age. Long, long time ago now. When I first came across this technology, it was to help me excel as an athlete, yet I also had a number of other breakthroughs. The biggest breakthrough looking back on my life now is probably overcoming debilitating asthma and going on to compete as an athlete on a world stage, competing in Europe and the States and everything else really. Yet, in saying that, when I look back and I think of the investment I made in learning these skills, and I think back, had I invested that money in anywhere else, in stocks, in shares, in the bank, we've got any bankers in here, I don't want to disappoint anybody, my return would have been very minimal, if nothing. If I look back on the investment, since I was 16, 17 years of age, learning these skills for the very first time, what price could I put on that investment? No price at all. No price, because all the things that I've been able to do, that I wanted to do. Don't get me wrong, I've had some turbulent times, like everybody else. It's not all being plain sailing. Yet, the one thing I have been able to do is any challenge that's come my way, believe me, there's been a few of them, I've managed to rise above and keep focused. And also the impact it has on a big stage. So it's been a priceless investment, and I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of people across a broad range of areas, and I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. I like helping people. I think it's nice to help people fulfill their potential. I always think if you help people get to where they want to go, I'll help you get you where you want to go as well. It's a win-win situation. So throughout the evening, it's going to be really interactive. And I'm glad you can all make it, because time is the biggest investment anyone can make, really. You can't buy back time, well, not as far as I'm aware, unless you watch that film Limit. Is it Limitless? Or Time is what it's called, where you can buy time. It's very difficult to buy back time, so you know, you could be doing other things. You could be watching Coronation Street tonight if you wanted to. You could be watching the football when football season's over. I'm sure there's other things you could do, but you've come along here. And having come along here, it's worth taking part in the exercises. I always say that if you take part and you do the exercise for yourself, you're in a better position to go out and help somebody else. And I would say, someone else could probably back me up on this, scientifically it's been proven, if you teach other people, the retention is a lot more significant, which is key. Now, what I'd like to say is where these techniques come in really powerfully is obviously people who want to change. I always say to people that there are people out there that don't want to change, and that's fair enough. They are where they are, and I respect that. And I'll leave them to it until obviously they decide they want to make that change. Yet, in saying that, these are very powerful processes. And these processes really are what people do who become very successful. in their chosen field. Everybody's human. You know, people are all human. What I'm going to do to start the process this evening is get you to focus, okay, on what you would like to take from the evening. Now that's a famous quote by Jim Rohn, and it holds truth. That if you don't make your own plans, then you'll just become a part of somebody else's plans. And guess what they've got planned for you? Not a great deal. And there's a lot of truth in that, because ultimately it's about taking control of your own life, which is important. And I learned that a while ago, many, many years ago. I took it upon myself to want to change the world. I was in a good place. I'd achieved everything I set out to achieve, but I'm going to help everybody else as well. There was one occasion I went into an environment, I was delivering a training to a group of staff, and the manager of the team says to me, there's a particular member of staff who could do with your help. And I thought, okay, I'll go along and give her a hand, as you do. So I only had the best part of half an hour to communicate and engage with her. And in my engagement with the woman at this organisation, as soon as she saw me, she thought, I think in her own mind, that I had a magic wand, I could cure all our ailments. And in my own mind, it kind of gave me a sense of realism. Now, in my profession, I work alongside, have worked with counsellors, psychologists, psychiatrists, psychobabbalists, you name it, all of them. And I don't profess knowing about every other industry, and I think they all serve their purpose in their own right. Yet, I'm not a counsellor. I work in a proactive way to look for solutions. And one thing that dawned on me with this woman was that she, in her own mind, felt someone else was responsible for moving her from A to B, so to speak. And in my conversation, just in 5 minutes, if you come across people who you speak to, and you've only got to speak to them for like 2 minutes, and it's kind of, you feel this air of negativity. It's almost draining all of the energy you've got. You know, literally in 2 or 3 minutes, you know those sort of people you come across, and they literally drain you every ounce of energy you've got. I didn't even get a chance to speak to her, and I could sense her body language. She was carrying so much poison in her mind, enough probably to intoxicate the whole work environment she was in. And I began to speak to her and engage in conversation. I had this realization through the conversation that in her own mind, she felt, in her own words, she wasn't in a very good place. She moaned about her work, she moaned about her life, she moaned about everything and anything. And I thought to myself, is there anything positive in this person's life? Is there anything that she can think about, anything that can be positive? And I asked her a question. I said, is there anything that you do like about your job? And that was the worst question I could have asked. And she battered my head even more. You know, just pecking away, pecking away. And I thought to myself at that point, I go back to what I said about counsellors and everything else really. Some people need to open up and have some sort of dialogue. And in my conversation with counsellors and people who work in the field of psychology, they've once told me that some people don't want to change. They enjoy the attention they get from having problems. It's almost like they have a list. You know the sort of person you go to work in the morning and they've got this list and they walk around the office block, look at my problems, almost like it's an achievement. They have a lot of problems and be a miserable so-and-so. And basically you've got another person on the other side of the work environment, they've got their list as well. And it's almost like a battle. My problems are bigger than yours. You think, well, what a way to live. And ultimately, there is truth in people getting gratification from having these issues, so to speak. But ultimately, one thing I did do in the short time I had with her is I managed to plant the seed and get her to think about being grateful for some of the things that she had. And the way I did that, I said to her, I overheard that you're going to get fired. And as soon as I said that, she was like, oh my goodness, how do you know that? I just said, I've got a bit of a premonition, a gut instinct that, not to mention that she moaned for half an hour about her job, that you might get fired. And you know what happens? You ever come across those people who, they don't realise what they're going to lose or lost until you lose it? You know, it might be a part, it might be a job, it might be a car. My first car, I used to curse it over all those years ago. But when it was gone, when it got stolen, I felt absolutely gutted. And the key thing is really, sometimes you don't know what you lose until it's gone. And by saying that, it broke her state and got her to think, maybe she could just be grateful for what she had. And I told her to write a list of all the positive about the job that she had. And between talking to her and many months later, I was back in that town doing a seminar, not with the staff, just my own individual seminar. She came along and she looked like a changed character, and I spoke to her when I had the chance to, and she said, you know what, I took some of your advice and I write down all the things that I'm grateful for about the job I've got, and she came up with a list of 30, 40 things. She realised that she had a lot of benefits. She had good holiday, she had a good wage, she was very senior in the organisation, and sometimes we can take for granted the most powerful emotion of anything is definitely being grateful. There's no more powerful emotion, and we'll talk more about that as we go along. But what I'd like to do before we bat on is give you the chance to clear your mind. Okay, so you've probably gone through the course of a day, you've been busy at work or whatever else you do, and a good place to start when you're achieving any breakthroughs is clearing our mind. Has anyone ever been in a situation where it's almost like being in a treadmill? You get caught up in a situation, a job, a relationship, or just life in general. Then 5 years later, you've gone 5 steps forward and 10 back. You think, what have I done? Sometimes it's important to take stock and take a deep breath and just reflect on life. And I think that with all the technology that we've got these days, things like Facebook and all these social network sites and these phones, people don't take time to just have a cup of coffee and chill, relax, and think about things. And it's when you think about things, you have these, what we call realizations, which is pretty powerful stuff. Now, throughout the course of this evening, there'll be times when I ask you if you prefer to close your eyes with the technique, and that's entirely up to you. The benefits of closing your eyes is you can access the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind, for those of you who studied hypnotherapy and NLP, will be aware it's a lot more powerful than the conscious mind. But I'm not going to go into that for this evening because that's a different seminar for a different day. But by closing your eyes, you block out your conscious awareness and you can focus on the part of your mind which literally achieve miracles. The miracle of taking our first step, the unconscious simulation of modeling our first steps and saying our first words. We kind of take for granted what the unconscious mind is capable of, and sometimes we actually look at other people in awe for what they do and forget what we're capable of and what we've done in our own right. So the first part of the exercise, if you'd like to close your eyes and just really relax and let yourself go. I'm going to count backwards from 5 to 1. As I count backwards from 5 to 1, just let yourself go. 5. Really relax. And as I count backwards, just imagine walking down a staircase. And as you walk down that staircase, you can feel your foot landing on the stair. 3. Just really relax. Relaxing your shoulders. You can feel your feet against the floor, your back against the chair, your heart rate, your breathing. And just let your mind go and really relax. And imagine emptying all your thoughts into a big bin liner, and you can leave them at the front for 5 minutes and pick them up later if you wish. Just declutter your mind and really relax and clear your mind and access your unconscious mind. And as I count to 1, just imagine walking through a door, and as you walk through that door, you're in an environment where you feel relaxed, calm, peace, love. You can go back to a time in your life where you felt really relaxed. Notice the surroundings, any colours, any feelings, where the feelings are. Let those feelings magnify for every cell and muscle in your body. Just really enjoy that moment like it's in the here and now. And give your mind a chance to just freshen up, declutter, almost like getting off a treadmill of life, and just let the treadmill keep going while you get off and really relax and take a deep breath and just enjoy that tranquility and peace for a few moments. And in that state of mind, I want you to think about what you'd like to gain from this evening. What would help you achieve outcomes and goals? What you'd like to take away from this evening. And gradually in your own time, in your own pace, I'm going to count back from 3 to 1. 3, just gradually coming back. 2, gradually coming back. 1, just come back to the here and now in your own time, in your own pace. Okay, we're all here, back at the Village Hotel. You've got to come back now. If you at the back don't want to come back, I'll call you tomorrow night. We'll call you tomorrow morning, back here tomorrow morning. Okay, so what would you like to take away from this evening? I'm going to put out there to the group. This is your time, as well as obviously me putting in some time as well. Is there anything anyone would like to take away from this evening? We're doing some very powerful processes. What would you like to take away? What would make a difference in your life this evening? Anybody? Confidence. Okay. Anybody got anything else?
Clarity.
Clarity. Okay. Okay. Anybody? Inspiration. You guys don't ask for a lot. Have you got that magic wand?
Yeah.
Anywhere you can. Yeah. Very much so. And I think that with all that in mind, I'm sure there's been times that everyone in the group has been confident and inspired, motivated, very clear. But clarity is power. The clearer you are about where you are, where you want to go, the more chance you have of getting there. So being very clear and very focused is very powerful. Not just being confident in what you do. And there always is a difference between confidence and competence. If someone said to me, "Can you do brain surgery tomorrow morning?" I'd probably say no, because I'm not trained in brain surgery. It's not a lack of confidence, it's just an awareness. If someone said to me, "Would you like to do a seminar tomorrow morning in an area that was understood," then I would do it. So there is that difference between the two as well. And I think that the key thing is identifying where we are, which is quite powerful. Okay, now the first part of the seminar is finding your true self, finding your self-awareness. Now bearing in mind, when you're born in this world, you're not born with any meaning, with anything. Everything that you experience and where you are today is all the experiences that you've had throughout life. So you're born with what we call a clean slate. Through life, you pick up values, beliefs, experiences, and they shape the person you are. The person you are today is subject to all these billions of experiences that you will experience from day one. Yet, in saying that, when we go to school, we develop academically, we learn, we're giving a course of action, a plan. We don't really spend a lot of time developing our awareness, our emotional intelligence, our character. Whenever I go to schools and ask young people, how would you define who you are? Blank expressions. And sometimes, as my colleague pointed out, he said that the teachers would struggle to tell you who they are, let alone students. And it's a very powerful process. Finding who we are is very powerful, because through life we become the sum of all our emotions. Some people call themselves a happy person, a sad person. We become labeled. Some people call themselves depressed. Some people call themselves anxious. Some people become their identity professionally. They call themselves a lawyer. They go home, they cross-examine the whole family, and they wonder why the family's breaking up. Yet, some people call themselves the 1952 sports champion or the 1965 prom queen. Yet, I'd like to think personally we're more than what we attach ourselves to. I think at a deep intrinsic level, everybody's got some sense of purpose. It's finding that purpose and channeling it in the right direction. And I truly believe that the younger that people are familiar with building an identity, the more stronger they'll become. I've been experiencing this myself. I've gone to schools and I've asked groups of young people, young lads and girls alike. And sometimes you go into school. I remember going into a grammar school once to do a tour, over in Lancashire, and I asked a group of girls, what would you like to do with your life? I'm interested, I'm curious, as you are, I'm a curious person. And I would say that at least a quarter of them said they wanted to be a footballer's wife. Who's writing stuff. Imagine being the parent that's funding them to go to that school. You'd be pretty horrified. That said, you can get the job. Not a bad way to make a living, is it really? But the reality is that, you know, all jokes aside, because the seminar is serious, because your life is serious, it is concerning, and to think that socially, what are we doing to have people thinking like that? And as I said before, sometimes you speak to adults who are very high even professionally, and they are pretty much all over the place really. So the key is to have that self-awareness. And what I'd like to do is an exercise. And once again, as I've mentioned earlier, if you want to and you feel more comfortable doing so, you can close your eyes and reflect. But I want you to take a moment to reflect on who you are. How would you define yourself? And one thing to bear in mind, how you define who you are will impact your behavior. Okay, so take a couple of minutes to think and reflect, and maybe take a few notes. And how would you define who you are? How would you define who you are? Simple question, very challenging answer. Okay. Okay, would anyone like to share, or anyone like to contribute to the exercise? Andrew, please.
These sound a bit bad actually. Pushy. Driven. Focus. Challenges. Very kind of get something in mind. I'll achieve it, but along the way I tend to get passive.
Okay.
As well.
Okay, and that's how you define?
That's how I am, yeah.
That's how you define your identity?
Yeah.
Okay. Define at the dinner table? Anybody else?
I think it's really hard to nail down because there's a sense of being somebody slightly different according to the relationship or the company you're in, or what you have to achieve at any particular time.
Yeah.
So I think it jumps all over.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm sure we are different in different situations. As I mentioned earlier, if you were working as a GP or a lawyer, you probably wouldn't want to be behaving in the same way to your family when you're at home. Yet in saying that, people do. People find it very difficult to break away from their identity. And it is a very difficult question in certain situations because we become. Yet, I would say, you know, certainly in your case, Andrew, maybe beyond the course, and what you said there, I would say beyond that, you know, what you've achieved and where you are and the things that you've done are above and beyond anything that she's mentioned there. But ultimately, we get caught up in this identity. And sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, it's good to reflect and see exactly how far we've come. And by doing that, it gives us empowerment. But what I would say as well, sometimes it's worth thinking, you know what, it doesn't matter who I was or who I think I might be today, it's who I'm developing, who I'm going to be. And there's a power in becoming the person you want to be. Why wait for tomorrow? Why not start today? And whatever's happened in the past is gone. You don't have to tie yourself to any identity. So if you feel a certain way, you think a certain way, you don't own it. A lot of these beliefs, some of these negative beliefs, we pick up along the way, probably very early, sometimes very early on in our life, not even ours. They're not even ours. So why would you keep something that's not even yours, that's not getting to where you want to get to? And what I would suggest that in tonight's seminar, we're literally fitting in 15 years of work in 2 hours, and we're not going to get a chance to cover everything in its entirety, but do take these techniques away and do reflect and think about these things. And do challenge the people around you as well. Challenge your clients. I certainly challenge my clients, very much so. I challenge myself. I remember a few years ago, and I've had the privilege of working with many clients across a broad range of areas. I've seen them go off and do amazing things. Even, they won't mind me saying, surprise me at times. By challenging them, you get the best out of them. Now, I remember years ago, I was working with, she was a young girl, and in her own mind, she was new to journalism. She'd graduated. And I was doing a little bit of work with her at the time. She had aspirations to go on and do really well. And I worked with her. And I didn't see her for a few years until one morning I was in London doing a seminar. I was in the hotel room, I switched on the TV, and I was watching BBC World News, and there she was. And I sent her a text, said congratulations and well done. I wasn't aware you'd come so far in such a short space of time. And she texted back, said thank you, when she got the opportunity to. And it was really amazing to do that. I think it's an amazing feeling to see people go away and fulfill their potential, and really to play whatever part we do in their lives. Whatever small part I had at that point was an amazing feeling. And sometimes it only takes one word of encouragement to shift someone's focus, their perspective. If you change your perspective, you change your world. So sometimes as humans we complicate things and look for the most big answers, when really it's just a question of tweaking a few things here and there. And through the course of this evening we're going to do a number of techniques that really give you the opportunity to dig deep. To dig deep and begin to realize where you are, where you'd like to be. And as I said before, you may be where you want to be, yet in saying that, by practically applying these skills, if you do it for yourself, it becomes more natural and effortlessly when you're doing it with somebody else. The first thing I'd like to do, and the first process I want to do this evening, is I want to talk about our values. I want to talk about how your identity impacts your behavior and how these beliefs can have a negative impact on your life. Some have a good impact on your life. And really, what are beliefs? Beliefs are generalizations. They work okay to a point. Okay, if we didn't generalize, you need to learn how to drive the car every morning. You need to learn how to make a cup of tea every morning. So they can be good, but they can also be negative. Because when we start generalizing, it can be a limiting belief. And it doesn't take long to pick up a generalization, negative belief. Just think about this scenario. Could you imagine waking up in the morning, and you've got an interview at say 9 o'clock, and you've got the alarm set for 7, and you oversleep, it's 8:30, and you get up, you rush around school, coffee all over your suit, and you get in the car in a traffic jam. What do you think about the day? Because our mind is selective. We only focus on a minimal amount. Okay? We only focus on a minimal amount of information. So the first thing I'd like to do for this evening, I want to identify and think about times you were most proud in your own life. Okay. So take the time to do the following exercise, and you can write down if you want, you can close your eyes and relax and go through the exercise. But think about the times in your life where you were most proud of achievements, things that you achieved, examples, professionally, personally. Why were you proud? Why were you proud? Did other people share your pride? Who shared that pride with you? What other factors contributed to your feelings of being proud? So you can reflect on your own life. Times when you felt personally and professionally. You stood up, you counted, made a difference, and just take time to reflect on times in your life. Okay, would anyone like to share with the group? Anyone like to share with the group any moments that personally, professionally, you had a strong sense of pride or of an achievement? Yeah.
I've been very successful over the years with businesses, which I started from nothing and then carried through and then sold, made money on them, which was the ideal thing. But my personal life suffered because of that.
Yeah.
And then in 2005, I was diagnosed with cancer, and everything changed completely at that point. I lost my business, basically. Almost lost my health, lost my marriage. But what I gained was a sense of self-worth and confidence that came back because of the adversity and the fear that went with it at that time. And I'm extremely proud of myself and my family and the support that they gave me at that time and the way that I have overcome my fears. I've shared my experiences with other people and that's helped them. I started a new career, which I'm very proud of. I've got a new business that I'm enjoying. And I'm starting to enjoy my life again.
Brilliant. Good for you. Well done. Well done. And I think that it's interesting you say that, you know, certainly from our own adversity, we can, if not just inspire ourselves, inspire other people as well. Many people, and I've had the privilege to work with people who respond one way or the other. They have adversity, and they either sink or swim. There's a choice. There's a choice, and we can make a choice to respond and stand up, and a lot of these techniques that we'll cover tonight do emphasize the choice between taking one option or the other option. It's entirely up to yourself as an individual and your clients, if you're coaching as well. The ball is firmly in their court. You can take them so far that they have the choice to respond any which way they can. What about times you were most fulfilled? Take a moment, or take a few moments to think about times that you were most fulfilled in your life. Okay? You can use work and personal life. What desire? How did you experience that fulfillment? What meaning? Bearing in mind in life, nothing has any meaning other than what we give to it. We mentioned earlier, when we're born, we have a clean slate. Nothing has any meaning until we give it a meaning. So we're digging deep here. And the relevance of the exercise, I will talk about as we proceed through the exercise. But for now, if you can play ball, you'll get a lot out of these techniques. I'm sure of it. Take the time to just reflect and take a few notes. And it's not often that we take time to do these exercises and self-reflection. It's not often we make the time. There's always something more pressing. People I work with, there's always something more important to do. Something more important to do. Now, who and what is that something more important to do? Is it more important to you or to somebody else? Sometimes it's about taking stock and dealing with what is important to us intrinsically and taking control. Because ultimately, if you look at the world that we live in today, there's plenty of self-help books, there's plenty of courses, plenty of motivational speakers, there's plenty of information, yet there's plenty of miserable people out there as well. And you think, well, where are things going wrong? Because people deal with the surface. They don't deal intrinsically and dig deep. And it's easy to work with the exterior and learn a few capabilities and learn a few behavioural changes. Yet, how long do you think that behavioural change will last? How far will capabilities take you, do you think, if you don't deal with deeper, more intrinsic beliefs, values and identity? take a moment to just reflect and just come up with whatever comes to mind. And before we proceed, I just want to put it out to the group. Is everyone in the group where you want to be? Is everyone where you want to be? Is the present day, here and now, exactly where you want to be? No?
Yeah.
No? Who's where, just to show our hands, who's exactly where they want to be? Yeah. I admire your honesty. I think we did that survey on the street, you'd probably find that at least. Well, what do you think is a percentage if we went on the street and asked a number of people? How many people do you think out there are where they want to be? How many do you think? Yeah. Give or take. And how come the percentage that aren't where they want to be? Why do they do nothing about it?
They don't know where they want to be.
Sorry.
They don't know where they want to be.
They don't know where they want to be.
Is that also though, because you might be where you wanted to be 2 years ago, but now you've got future goals. That's the way I feel, is that I'm still striving to create more and more goals in the future.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
I feel quite the most fulfilled I've been for a long time, and still moving forward.
Would you like to take the second half of the seminar? You can share with the group. Okay. And that's fantastic. And I think that. And how did you manage to get there? How did you do that? You know, how did you manage to get yourself to where you are? Has it always been that way, or did you?
No. I mean, if I related to that question, in the past, I've either had career success, or I've had relationship success. I've never been able to have them intertwined.
Okay.
And you know, a bit like the lady over there that said, you know, things suffered, but I tended to be broke up in a relationship. I threw myself into my career, and then if I met somebody, I just sort of sat back and let my career just plod on a bit. I've now reached a point where I now work for myself. I've got my own company, and I met my husband. Well, I've been with him 10 years now, but I found a way of combining both of them. And it's through setting goals. It's also through key communication. When I first started working away from home a lot, he absolutely hated it, to the point I had to say to him, "Don't make me choose, because you might not like the answer." And I'd only been married for 6 months. But you know, we've learned to communicate, we've learned to respect each other, and I guess he's happy because he knows I'm happy, and that kind of thing.
So you worked at things professionally, personally. You put work into it. Definitely. And I think that some of that work helped you create that clarity and that vision, one would think.
It does also make a difference in a married man that has more respect than some of my past fellows.
Well, we won't go down there. Maybe that's a different story on a different day. But you know, it is interesting what you're saying. I think ultimately, of course, you know, some people are where they want to be. Some people through chance. Some people through work and effort. I think more often than not, it takes work. I think some people don't know where they want to be. They can get lost into the abyss, so to speak, and it's possible to do so. And how do you think people get there? How do you think people get to that situation in life where they feel completely lost and overwhelmed and aren't sure whether they're coming or going? How does that happen?
Well, I think you listen to other people, what they want in their life, and then they try to compete. Because in a competing society, or certainly the Western society, is one of competition. So we try to compete similar to one person has one problem, and then you want to beat the worst problem. So that competition also then leads in the driving fear and insecurity. So it's a circle, really.
And that's a good point, because it's about running our own race, deciding who we are, what our purpose is, and what we want. And the best way to decide what we want is through some of these key processes we do tonight. Find out what's important to us. What do we want for us? And certainly you're right. That's a great point, because in my experience, I've had clients come to me for depression, for example, and I've asked them, how long have you been depressed for? A few months. How do you know you got depression? Doctor told me. What are you doing about it? Taking medication. How's the medication make you feel? Like a zombie. Do you enjoy taking the medication? I have to. Fine, okay, have you been happy in your life? They don't remember. I think, can you not think back to a time when you were happy? Don't remember. It comes to that. And when I ask them for things they do in their life, they appear to be functional. They can go out, go for a drink at the pub, go play golf, watch TV. So a lot of times that they seem to be very functional, yet in their own mind, they feel a certain way. How do they get there? I had a client once who said to me that she was depressed, looking from the outside in, her role professionally, her personal life, and she told me about what she did, and actually about doing things, and she was contemplating taking medication. She wasn't sure what to do. I don't advocate you shouldn't. And I asked her about the depression she was experiencing, and I said, well, just out of interest, what gives you that assumption that you have got depression? And she said, well, whenever I log onto Facebook and I look at other people's photos, I feel my life is not so great. I said, really? And that makes you feel depressed? Yeah, my friend is always happy. She's always going places. And I thought you could just well be describing yourself. I said, do people put bad pictures on Facebook? Probably not. Do you put bad pictures on Facebook? No. Well, it's an illusion, isn't it, really? So we stop running our own race. And if you compare yourself to somebody else, yeah, you might switch on a soap and watch Coronation Street or EastEnders and see people's lives that are completely doomed, and you might feel a bit better. Fantastic. Look at Deirdre. You know, she's just lost her job. Look at Deirdre. Her husband just left her. You know, she's lost her job, and I think, you know what? Oh, that's not so bad. But on the flip side to that, you log on to Facebook and you see your best friend from school skydiving off an aeroplane in Hawaii. You think, that. So where do we stand? I think ultimately, it doesn't matter what you do, where you live, or anything like that. Those changes won't make any difference. Because regardless of where you live, you could live in Hawaii. I'm sure people in Hawaii suffer from heartache, they suffer from breakups, they suffer from all the things that we suffer over here, and they've got some of the highest levels of depression in the world as well. So that won't really make a difference. You could change your job and go from the fire to the frying pan. Yet ultimately, if you're not doing what you want to do, it's very unlikely you're going to achieve any sense of happiness. But that's just it. The first thing that everybody tried to do was bring me back down again. I thought, that's a little bit strange. I couldn't really understand it at the time, but then ultimately, the adjustment comes through our own evolution, from looking at ourselves and seeing what's important to us. And I thought, well, you know what? Does it really matter what anybody else thinks or says or does? The ball's in their court. And I think more often than not, most people tend to be more focused on their own life. And I think ultimately, the only person we can control is ourselves. We can take control of our own thoughts and feelings. And we can see the glass half full, we can see it half empty. That's entirely up to us. We have a choice. External events as well. People say to me, well, how do you explain people who've had situations that have been very, very challenging? How do you explain it? I don't know. I don't profess to know, but we have a choice to react in whichever way we can. I've certainly met a lot of people, in my experience, who have experienced more adversity than anybody ever could imagine. But it's turned it around. They're happier than a lot of people in the world that we live in today. There are people who have suffered, you know, accidents and have major illnesses, and they've managed to turn things around. They're happier than people who are relatively well, healthy, who don't take advantage of where they are, which is key. The next part of the exercise is, I want to determine your top values. What are the things that are most important to you? What are the things that are, and in the NLP world, the value is simple. It's just what's important to you in a given context. What is important to you? What are the most important things in your life? And think about certain experiences that you've had in life. Certain experiences that you've had in life, and why is each experience truly memorable to you? Just take a time to reflect and think about your own life, looking back, certain experiences that you had, and think about how memorable they are. And these are experiences that no one will ever take away. They're yours. You own them. And no doubt, you will have more unique experiences. The best times are yet to come, so let's say. And one way to begin to align and get some alignment, because what do you think happens if you've got goals? Your goals are going one way and your values are going another way. What do you think happens if what's important to you is over here and what you're going for in life is over there? If your values and your goals aren't in alignment, what do you think happens? You ever met anybody before that their goals and values aren't in alignment? Has anyone ever come?
You're in a place of flux, but you're not really sure
Yeah.
where you are going because you're being pulled
Yeah.
either way.
Yeah. So you, in effect, you could be striving for these goals. They don't really mean a great deal to you.
No, because it's in conflict with what you actually want and what you actually need.
Yeah.
What your inner needs are is over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got the money here, I've got my new career here, this is all what I want.
Yeah.
I'm losing all this behind me.
Yeah, and I'm sure we've all seen people in the media and TV that have gone on to achieve vast amounts of fame, vast amounts of money, who've ended up alcoholic, depressed, even suicide. So it's probably not always the answer. And it's possible to strive. Is it possible for us to strive to get famous because with that fame we think that we're going to achieve some sort of sense of self-worth? Is it possible to work every hour God sent to make as much money as we can? Because with that money, we're going to achieve some sense of self-worth. Is it possible? It certainly is. And I'm not suggesting any career path is better than another, but ultimately, if it's not coming from within and it's not giving us any fulfillment, then we're going to end up, regardless of how much fame, money, whatever you've got, what you do, the solution to a certain extent. So taking time prior to setting goals and thinking, what exactly is important to me? What do I want out of my life? What exactly do I want out of my life? What is important to me? That way I can begin to navigate and set goals that give me a sense of purpose. Because is it really the destination or the journey? Have you met anyone that's set goals, or have you set goals in the past yourselves and achieved them and thought, is that all it is? You get there and you think, has anyone actually done that before you set goals? Think, is that all it is? You know, I know I've done that in the past. Many, many years ago, I set goals. Get there and think, is that all it is? Get up in the morning, still the same person. Nothing really changes. You ever come across those sort of people who just strive and set these goals, and ultimately they become equally, if not more, unhappy and more disillusioned. I speak from experience, I've been there myself. Because there's one thing setting goals, but there's one thing actually taking the time. And like I said, with these exercises, you can take them away, and I'm more than happy, and I'll email everybody an e-guide. You can have a presentation, entirely up to you, and you can reflect on some of the work we've covered tonight, because this is really powerful stuff. Very powerful stuff. And I've been very fortunate to work with so many people across a broad range of areas. And this is one of those powerful stuff that helps them decide about making informed choices, being very clear about what's important to them and what they want out of their life, which is obviously important. Now, moving forward, we begin to prioritise our top values. Okay, we can begin to prioritise what our top values are. So think about your top values, or take time to write down an exhaustive list of what's important to you. Take a few moments to write down an exhaustive list of what is important to you. And can anyone share with the group? Anyone got anything that they could lend with the group? What's important to you as a group, just out of interest? Family is important, okay. Okay. Anybody got anything else?
Generosity.
Okay, generosity, yeah. Health, yeah. Honesty, yeah. Okay.
Vitality.
Sorry?
Vitality.
Vitality, okay. Anyone got anything else?
Freedom.
Freedom. So, if family was your top value, and you were spending every hour God sent working and not seeing your family, how do you think you'd feel? Health was your top value, and you weren't doing any exercise or eating well, how do you think you might feel? Or freedom, and you were tied to a job you didn't like? Would there be a potential conflict there?
Yeah.
Health? Certainly. Of course, definitely. So if we're not in alignment, and we're not balancing our time effectively, yeah, we're going to get what we call these emotional tugs. We're going to get these reactions. That said, being aware of what our top values are will give you that realization as to how you spend your time. So sometimes it's worth reflecting on these values. Your top 5 values will generally determine how you spend your time, or how you feel about the way you're spending your time. You're not spending it the way you'd like to spend it. Your top 5 values are very powerful drivers. So it's worth taking the time to elicit them. I once had a client who came to me, potential client. She phoned me up. She said, a friend recommended I come and see you. I said, okay, what can I do for you? She says, I haven't worked for 2 or 3 years. I want to get back into work. My colleagues told me you can really help me prepare these presentations that I want to deliver. She wants to take a new role back with the organisation she was with before. I said, sure. Come down, we'll do a consultation, and we'll see how we go from there. So she comes along to the consultation, and we have an informal chat. And I asked her, just out of interest, I said to her, what exactly is important to you in your life at this moment? She said to me, I want to book every course that you offer, and I want you to coach me. I'm prepared to pay whatever it takes. I want to get back to this level. I said, how come? She said, a few years ago, I suffered a confidence crisis. A confidence crisis at work. Her managing director had a go at her at a presentation she was delivering, and she said after that, she handed in a resignation and literally went away from that environment. And for the last 2-3 years, she just stayed away. And she goes, I want you to get me back to where I was. You're a peak performance coach. Help me get back to where I want to be. I said, okay. Let's just start from the beginning. And I elicited her values. I asked her what's important to her in her life. And I got an exhaustive list of what's important in her life. And literally, as a result of doing that session, she said, you know what? I've drawn my own conclusions. In her own words, not mine, in her own words, she said to me that she'd realized that her life had changed significantly. Okay? 10, 15 years earlier, her first husband passed away. She remarried. The person she was with was relatively affluent and had a comfortable life. She had kids and grandkids, and she realized that that wasn't important to her anymore. She was going to embark in this mission just to prove this guy wrong. And I said, well, really? Because ultimately she said, if I do work part-time. I said, well, the reality is, if you're going part-time, will you stay part-time? She says, not really. 20 hours will become 40, 50. I said, what will happen to your family life? She loved spending time with grandkids. She was late 50s, early 60s. She loved spending time with grandkids. And other things that she wanted to do. I said, are you willing to sacrifice that? She said, I don't think I am. And she had that realization that the only thing she was missing ultimately was in the morning she'd wake up and she'd talk to her husband about work, and she didn't feel she was contributing to it. And that's all she was missing. So I literally, old numpty head here, talked himself out of booking her in all my courses, all my coaching, all her packages. But you know what? It doesn't matter. I would rather her find her path. And ultimately, it just came as a result of eliciting some key values. So I would definitely suggest, when you go away from here, you've got more time, and you've got more an environment you feel comfortable, really relaxed in, to just take the time and listen to your values. So one of the easiest ways to do that is ask yourself what's important to you about a given context. So if you're thinking about a career change, ask yourself what's important to me about a career change. If you think about the relationship, what's important to you about a relationship? If you think about almost anything in life with any context, ask yourself what's important to you in that area and get an exhaustive list. Generally what I do with my clients, I will ask them what's important to them about a specific context, then I'll give me an exhaustive list, then I'll ask them again what's important, and I'll ask them a few times so I'll get about 10 to 15 different values, and sometimes certain things, and the one thing I make sure I don't do is paraphrase or dive in if it's not clear. So for example, someone might say a tidy desk is important to me. It's probably not really a value. So what I'll say is, what do you mean by a tidy desk? And I'll say, well, organised, and that's a value. So being very clear about that can be very, very powerful stuff. Really useful to do that. Now, what I'd like you to do before we have a short break and have a stretch and a drink, I want you to just reaffirm your values. Just reaffirm your values. Think about what's important to you. Think about the list that you wrote down. Your values that are important to you. And like I said, you could do it as a matter of context, work, personal life, or any area you want. Or you can just keep it very generic to familiarise yourself with the activity. It's entirely up to you what you do and how you play ball. But I want you to now think and just reaffirm your top values. And having reaffirmed your top values, think about your top 3 or 4. Are you proud of your top 3 or 4 values? Do they give you a sense of pride? Would you be comfortable telling people they're your top values? And ultimately, do those values support the person you are and would like to be or aspiring to be? Okay. And these can be very powerful in making informed choices. Is anybody involved in sales in the group? Anybody involved in sales? We've got a few people involved in sales. Well, I'm here to tell you that we all are involved in sales. Whether you're a teacher, a baker, or a candlestick maker, you sell. You sell yourself. That sounded a bit dodgy, didn't it? But you do. You sell. People buy in. As a coach, when someone comes to see me, they're buying to me, helping me to where I get to. Okay, as a teacher, your students buy into you. As a psychologist or psychiatrist, whatever you do, they buy into you. And taking time to find out people's values can be quite powerful, because the danger is we can guide and facilitate people based on our map of the world, based on our core values. And taking time to find out what people's values are can be very powerful stuff. If someone comes to me for a session and they want to make changes, I'll ask them what's important to you about making those changes. What's important to them? How does it work in their world? For those of you who are directly involved in sales, working out what people's values are, providing you meet the criteria, you've got a better chance of selling the product you've got to offer. And you might think, well, that's common sense, people should know to do that already, they do that already. Well, I tell you what, the last time I went with someone to buy a car, I took a friend of mine to go see a car. She wanted to buy a car. She had the money to buy a car. She'd saved for a long time to put this proportion of money to buy a car outright. And we went along to a car garage. And we turned up to this car garage and we're looking for these various cars. And the salesperson comes along and says, did not take the time to ask us what we were looking for. Just basically said, well, this is what we've got in the showroom. But fine, can we go have a look? Yeah. Didn't take the time to find out what we were looking for at all, until ultimately there was one that we were sort of passively interested in. And my friend said, I'm interested in that car. And the salesperson proceeded to say, you know what? You could take that car home today if you wanted to, which is fine. Okay, great. And she said, well, I'd like to buy a car cash, outright. I've saved to buy it outright. And you know what the salesperson said? Well, you're an idiot. What a great sales technique. And why was she an idiot? Because she didn't think that finance was a good option. He said if you buy it finance, you could put that money in the bank and the interest you make would cover not only the repayment, you make a bit of a profit. Well, he might have been wrong, he might have been right. He didn't do himself any favours in that situation. All he had to say is what's important to you. And my friend would have told him what's important to her. And providing he's got a car that meets the criteria, he could have taken her to see a car that met those values. Because we can make assumptions. I did a course once and someone on my course said they were looking for a new car. And because they drove into the forecourt with a car with a baby seat, the salesperson made the assumption that they were looking for a car to replace that car. It wasn't what they were looking for. They were looking for a car that they could drive on Sunday on their own, a sports car. But the salesperson didn't take the time and showed them every car in the forecourt. So if you'd just taken that time to say what's important to you, there would have been opportunity to, one, meet the criteria, but also make sure that it ties in the person's values. So if someone comes along to you and you were selling a car, and they said they were looking for a car that's good on fuel economy, that's safe, that's reliable, would not be advisable to show them a car that's good on fuel economy, safe and reliable. Would you take it to the opposite end of the spectrum? What would be the informed thing to do? Take them something they're looking for. And providing those criteria, it's a win-win, isn't it? And that's what it's all about. So regardless of what you do, this is powerful stuff. And it's worth taking time. I work with high-risk offenders as well, and in negotiation, working with high-risk offenders, getting them to do certain tasks require a lot of energy and effort and concentration. Yet, I get into the hearts and mind of the person and ask them what's important to them. And I use that, and I facilitate that to guide them towards where they want to be. And I know that certain people work in different environments. You know, we all have different challenges and different environments to work in. But a good place to start is work out what our core values are. But what I'd like to do now, because we're going to have a short break for 10 minutes or so, then we'll come back, and after the break, we're going to do some very powerful exercises. The second part of the seminar is very, very powerful, some more powerful exercise. Has anyone got any questions so far? Anyone got anything they'd like to ask? Any questions? Anyone got any questions like that? Yep.
Do your values and beliefs that your parents project onto you cause more conflict when you get older, and maybe that's what causes the problem?
Yes, a good point.
It fights against what you want. You don't want to do what they did. You want to
certainly
set your own path.
Certainly. So just to make sure I've understood you correctly, so your parents' values and beliefs have an impact on our. Of course they can. Yeah. Certainly can. Definitely. And some of their values and beliefs can work for us. A classic example is, I don't know if you've ever read the autobiography, or I read the, actually I watched it on TV, the story of Sal and Sugar. And his parents were in the civil service, they were public servants. And they were adamant that he should follow in the same footsteps because it was a job for life. Not a job for life anymore, but back then it was. And in his own mind, he said, you know what, I'm going to go sell antennas from the back of my car. And I said, you've got to be mad. You want to work for the civil service, job for life, security. And in his own mind, he said, no, I'm going to go and do what I want to do. So ultimately, his parents wanted the best for him, because that was their model of the world, but he had the foresight to see otherwise. He's done pretty good since. So I think ultimately, yeah, we can make informed choices, but it will have an impact, certainly. Certainly, there are a number of factors that can impact our experiences. Some of them are passed on by parents, siblings, social groups, modelling people. Some work for us, some can work against us. But I'd like to believe that, unlike some conventional psychology, they say that key phase, 0 to 7, that imprint phase, when our filter's very raw. For example, if someone said to you that you weren't very good at something that you knew you were good at now, you'd probably laugh it off. But between 0 and 7, if someone told you opposite, useless, worthless, whatever else, you take it on board. you take it on board. And certainly in my experience of working with people, I was working with a girl who had a very lucrative career in modelling. Did very, very well financially, professionally. She, in her own mind, as she was going towards a new career path, she was going to give all that industry up. In her own mind, she believed congruently that she was ugly. And the reason she said she believed that is that very early on in her life, she had one very abusive parent. I used to call her that, and that stuck with her. So regardless of how or what she looked, and think about these beliefs for one moment. Think about the way they work. They're memory selective. So she might have got 100 compliments in one day, and someone just did to say your shoes aren't very nice, and she hung on to that and was like reinforcing it. See, I told you so. See, I told you so. But what about other people who praise you? That's deleted. So it can be very powerful, very much so. And as conventional psychology says, that neuroscience imprint phase, the child is father of the man, so to speak. If you believe it's true, we're old enough to make informed choices. We can make an informed choice. If it's not working for us, then we can cut the umbilical cord and say, you know what, I'm not taking it no more. I don't want it. Send it back to where it came from. The first class land. Entirely up to you. Okay, so you can have a break for 10 minutes. I'll have an interim break. I have to stretch. 18 years of age. So think of what your ordinary 17, 18-year-old does on a Saturday night. Your ordinary 17, 18-year-old on a Saturday night goes out, has a good time. What I used to do, I had to go to the doctor and take allergy shots because I was competing on Sunday. And because I was competing on Sunday, I needed to take these allergy shots. Allergy shots, every night, up in the morning, compete. And I did that for a very long time. I did that to a point, after some severe asthma attacks, I got to the point where I sat in A&E one day, I was completely out of breath. I thought it was the end. I thought that was the end of the road for me. I couldn't breathe very well at all. And I thought, you know what, I've got to give all this up. If I get through, I'm going to give sport up and I'm going to do something different with my life. And I sat there, I came round, and I thought, it doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense. I'm doing everything I can to get better, and the one thing I really want to do, that everyone told me I couldn't do, and I'm starting to do well. And we talked about the seminar early on about the pride and being proud and making other people proud and self-proud. Values that are important. I thought, well, what more can I do? What more can I do? And I thought maybe it's time to give up. And I thought, you know what? I'll see what happens. I'll put it on ice and I'll take a bit of time to think about it. But time is of the essence. Okay? In sport, every day counts. You haven't got much time to walk away and come back to it. Things happen really quickly. And I had someone who's very good at NLP at the time, and they said, well, take the time to think about it. And I did pretty much what we did earlier in the seminar, reflecting on where I was, what I wanted to do. And my big convincer in the world of NLP was, to this day, I don't know what it was. I did a process, an NLP process, and I don't know if it was down to that. I don't really care, it was down to that. But I'd gone back on my horse, so to speak, to use a metaphor, and I'd carried on my career. And eventually my career would take me from the most mind-numbing job. I was working the most mind-numbing job. It was a means to an end, just to make enough money. I grew up in the outer suburban Sydney to take me to Europe and do what I wanted to do. And I managed to pack that in. I got on a plane, and the rest was history, as they said. I worked very hard, and just as I was fulfilling my career and having worked through so many obstacles to get there, I suffered a very debilitating injury that would bring an end to my career, unfortunately, just when I'm at my prime. And you could imagine all my thoughts and feelings, having got through everything I did. And I did a process similar to this. I thought, is this really my life's work? And it comes. You know when you really want something so bad and you get there and it's sort of taken away, and you haven't got it no more? it was a challenge to get back up again. But what did it for me, I went to a few key events, was reflecting and deciding, you know, I've got a lifetime of experience that I can share with other people. I can help people get through difficult times. I can also help people get from A to B who've been in similar situations to myself, and that's what I did. And my first set of clients from retiring as an athlete were in sport, and they would go on to achieve phenomenal things. They do really, really well. And from there, it had a knock-on effect. I'd gone from working with sports people who, they weren't successful sports people, all of them, but we'd worked with them and they'd gone on to do really big things. And some of them have been very complimentary about the work that we did, which is nice. But also it had a knock-on effect. From doing that, I got involved in other situations. I got involved in the media, radio. I got involved in writing, as well. I got involved in helping people across a broad area of business, offenders. I still help them now as well. So I think ultimately, in my own mind, I had to come up with a new strategy. I had to literally reinvent myself because I got to a point where I was fed up and feeling sorry for myself. And I'll be honest and open about it. There were times when I gave up my athletic career that it was very overwhelming, and there were times I'd sit down and think about it. Was my athletic career went, but not only that went, as well as that, I lost a lot of people in my life that I thought were friends as well, and people who are family, I thought they were close to me. So you've been in a situation yourself where, you know, the people that you thought you could count on disappeared. But there were people as well that surprised me as well. But what mattered was myself, intrinsically, what I could do to turn things around. And there were times when I'd go to bed thinking, you know what, if I don't wake up tomorrow morning, does it really matter? And that's a dangerous place to be. Not a good place to be. Not good at all. I thought, back early in the seminar, I said, what does life mean anyway, other than what meaning we put on it? And you've got to get a sense of perspective sometimes, really. And I had my own wake-up call. I had this realisation I still had a lot to offer. And there was a point I had a chance to go back into sport as a competitor, and I said, you know what, I found a different path, a more enlightening path, really, which was really powerful. And looking back on my life, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this as well, you realise at the time, as hard as certain things are, when you look back, you realise that you wouldn't be where you are if it wasn't for that. And upon reflection, I'd realised that every cause has an effect. How we respond to what happens is entirely up to us, and which is key, and that's what's important. And what I'd like to do is take the time to think about what would you like to accomplish in your life. Take a few moments, brainstorm if you wish. I did this process and I realised I did my bucket list, so to speak. And it was ironic, really, that everything I wrote down that had meaning to me, I would go on and achieve. I would find a way, even though there were obstacles, and it wasn't always smooth sailing. I would find a way to get there. I would build resilience. Because you know what, there's people that go through life, they don't set any goals, or any conscious goals. We all have goals, we realise or not, because getting up in the morning and going to work is a goal. Why do you think some people don't consciously write goals that are going to test them? Why do you think people don't write goals that are going to challenge them? Why do you think some people? Yeah, fear of failure. Fear of failure. So what do? If they do consciously write goals, or they just sail through life and just see what happens, what they tend to do is do things that are in their comfort zone. It's easy, isn't it? It's easy sitting back, watching TV on a Saturday night, laughing at someone on the X Factor fall flat on their face. It's easy seeing a sports person fall over a stack of hurdles. It's easy seeing people fail, so to speak, in their exams. It's easy sitting back doing that, isn't it? It's a comfort zone. Yet, what I would say is the person having a goal has no regrets. There is no failure. It's feedback. You work out another way. So the person in the comfort zone, they've gone for the easy way out, but it's like the gym. You go to a gym, and what you put in, you get out. Emotionally, if you stay in that comfort zone, you're not going to test yourself. You're not going to build any resilience. So sometimes it's worth falling down and getting back up again. And certainly when I go into schools and I talk about goals, I will always have the teacher somewhere in the back come up to me afterwards and say, you know what are you setting these kids up to fail? Well, that's up to them to decide. It's entirely up to them to decide. Let them dream. Let them dream. Somebody has to achieve. Why not them? Why not encourage them? Why not empower them? Tell them they can, if they put their mind to it, achieve anything they want to. Because if it wasn't for people that did that, we wouldn't have all the things we have around us today. We wouldn't have phones, we wouldn't have aeroplanes, we wouldn't have cars. People who stand up and use their mind. So it's a double-edged sword, really, as well. And ultimately, I think the biggest lessons I'll learn in life is having a kick in the teeth. Getting yourself up and dusting yourself off. And what I tend to tell people is, you know what? Sometimes we place too much emphasis on not achieving a desired outcome. Ultimately in life, let's put perspective on it. We have to have a sense of perspective on it. We grow, we get stronger. It's not life and death. People set goals and have a goal. They don't drop there. You don't get there. You don't get there. You learn. You do something else. You get flexible. But the one thing's for sure is you build emotional resilience. And you can't really put a price on emotional resilience because people who set themselves in that comfort zone, they're the ones who, in my experience, look back and don't regret what they have done, they regret what they haven't done. For one reason or the other. So just take a few moments to think about that and think about things that you'd like to achieve. You're not accountable to anything. You don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. It's entirely up to you. But what I would say is you can always scale back. It's always possible to scale back. If you set your benchmark up here, you can always bring the bar down. If you set the bar here, and jump over that bar, then the chances are you're not testing yourself, which is key. But take a few moments to think about that, thing that you'd like to achieve.
I've just told you all right.
Back at some next week. Oh, it was tonight. I want to go to. I was going to go to Tuesday. I brought my double trip. But there isn't 1 miles of what's there. I'm going to go to the 5:30 because I can leave my house at 5 o'clock. And then that means I'll be back for 7 minutes. Excuse me. But I've got to wait till it's 7. I can't fly back 6. I've got to let me go off in the day. No, I know what's in it. Accept that. And then the 3-year plan.
Okay. And how often does anyone in the group actually sit down and reevaluate what they want to achieve? Does anyone do this regularly? Does anyone in the group actually reevaluate what you want to achieve? Yeah, some of you do. Okay. And do you know other people that do it as well, or anyone work with anybody that does a similar process? They actually sit down. Yeah. Anyone not write anything? Anyone not actually sit down? Or okay, some don't. Okay, some do, some don't. I know some people spend more time writing their shopping list down. Asda, toilet roll, beans, coffee, tea. Great. They don't spend 5 minutes writing what they want to achieve, and then the first people who moan about everybody else and be a lot of people who do go out and try and achieve things. Because as I said, that's the easy way out, short term, but long term, they're the ones that generally tend to be full of regrets on things that they didn't do. One thing I can say in my life, having experienced various ends of the spectrum, no regrets. I give everything the best. Haven't always succeeded. Open and honest about that situation. Clients come and see me. I haven't always got them to where I want them to be, but I can honestly, when I get up in the morning, look at myself and say, I give everything that I got. And there's a case for doing that. And I think it's quite powerful when you can do that. But also with that, I take great pleasure in seeing people go above and beyond their potential in business, in sport, in life in general. And you can't put a price on that. It didn't come easy, because if it were easy, everyone would just get up in the morning and decide to do it. When people talk about what I do as a coach, I think, great, it must be great to work with so many wonderful people. Well, it is, yet it's not easy, that's for sure. It can be very challenging, to say the least, yet in saying that, it is very rewarding as well, which is key. And I certainly think there's a case for thinking about that and going forward. Now, identifying obstacles. If you can think of what you want to achieve, what are some of the obstacles you've got? What are some of the obstacles that you've got in achieving what you want?
Fear.
Some of the obstacles. Fear, okay. Anyone got any other obstacles?
Time.
Time, okay.
Finances.
Finances, okay.
Focus.
Okay. Okay.
Society.
Society. Okay.
Technology.
Sorry. Okay. Okay. So we've got these obstacles. They're there for a reason. We can do one or two things. We can get to an obstacle and turn back, or we can think of a way around, a way over, a way to smash our way through. It's entirely up to us to make a decision. In my experience with working with people, sometimes you think it's possible to focus more on the obstacle than on the process to get us to the outcome that we want to achieve. Do you think some people do that? They focus so much on the obstacle in adverse to the realization of the outcome, which is key. I recently worked with a client, and my client has come to me, and he comes very regularly, every now and again, every year or so often. We sit down and help him sort of write some new goals. And I met him, he came on board a course a few years ago. Fantastic guy, a testament to turning your life around. You know, this guy here had a very, you won't mind me saying, challenging upbringing and a very challenging situation. And he's a testament to anybody turning his life around. But along the way, he has these little obstacles. And recently, he came along and saw me. He's involved in some really exciting projects. He got to work with and help a premiership football team recently, which was amazing for him, considering where he was and where he's come. And he's working at a very well-known hospital in Manchester, deploying his skills, which is phenomenal. And I said to him, I said, what can I do for you now? What can I do for you more than what you're doing yourself? You provided some input for a team that just won the FA Cup. Fantastic. You're doing really well. What can I do for you? He says, every now and again I have these little demons that come in the back of my head. I think, should I be here? I said, let people be the judge of that. You're doing it, you're living it. And we do meet people who, is it possible to sabotage our success? Is it possible to realize an outcome and think, okay, in realizing the outcome, we have a sense of what we might lose, or who we might leave behind, or what we'll become? Because sometimes the challenge isn't achieving the outcome, the challenge isn't the process of achieving the outcome, it's not even the obstacle. It's the apprehension to embrace change. How do people generally feel about change? How do people generally feel about change?
Resist it.
They can resist it, certainly. change is inevitable. In life, change is inevitable. It's something that we generally have some control over, but it's going to happen one way or the other. And through life, and certainly when I do these techniques and work with people, I don't leave it an area very well. I don't think the grass is, full of roses. I'm perfectly aware that life has its challenges. And that's about the only thing that we can guarantee. From when we're born, we'll experience those challenges. But the key is to set yourself up in a situation where you can overcome challenges and rise above. And certainly with my client, when I sat down with him and he realised just how far he'd come in just such a short space of time. Phenomenal. But you need to do that. You need to take stock sometimes. I do it myself. A lot of people do it themselves, where sometimes we forget how far we've come. Does anyone ever do that? You kind of forget and don't realise just how far you've come. Sometimes do it self-reflection and think about where you've come from and what you've managed to do and where you want to be. It can be quite useful. And sometimes, them obstacles that you sort of might identify by doing this process, them obstacles, you think, you know what, I've overcome bigger obstacles than that. Goodness me. I was in an environment once with work, doing some work, and we had a few obstacles. And I'm sat there focusing on these obstacles in this project I was working on. Walk towards the car at the end of the day, feeling frustrated, a bit apprehensive, a bit overwhelmed. Get in the car, and I sat down for a moment and thought, you know what? This is a walk in the park. I've got other big obstacles than these. So you've got to get a sense of perspective on these situations. And that's the key. Whatever it is. And yes, of course, people have got more advantageous situations than other people. They've been to better schools, they've got more money, they've got more resources. I don't deny that. Yet, if we look at people through the history who've gone on to do some big things, they haven't always had that. I'm sure you can think of a number of people who haven't had the best of anything, but they've managed to make the best of what they had. They managed to make the very best of everything that they had and channel it the right way. They weren't the most talented. They weren't the most academically bright. They weren't the most gifted, but they had the right attitude. And your attitude towards the obstacles will go a long way. Because if you resign yourself and think it's the teacher's fault, it's the parent's fault, it's his fault, it's her fault, then you'll never do anything. But if you decide to take responsibility and say, you know what, whatever the situation is, I'm going to give it a good go, then things tend to change. And I'm sure we could roll off a list of examples of a lot of people. You take your J.K. Rowlings of this world, a single parent and a counsellor statement who got out of an abusive marriage, who went on to write, obviously, best-selling books and all sorts of stuff, really. And you think, well, that's someone who got on with it. And there's many people who do that. And I think that where your obstacle is concerned, is thinking of ways to get through. Thinking of ways to not let them deter you from where you want to be. Okay. Keeping focused. And one of the ways to do that is formulate a plan. Okay, if plan A doesn't work, there's 25 more letters in the alphabet. If at first you don't succeed, pick yourself up and try again. Okay. Plan. Does anyone plan? Anyone in the group? Okay, plan. Okay, you do plan. Okay, plan. Okay. Okay. How far do you plan? How far does anyone plan? Week by week, year by year?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Tomorrow, tonight. Okay. Whatever's gone on in the past, you can't plan for anything that's happened. You can only start from today and onwards. Does anyone have a weekly plan that you work towards? Anyone do it weekly? Okay. Some people do, some people don't. Okay.
These wonderful things called diaries.
Yeah.
You can look ahead.
Yeah, you can do. Yeah. I won't tell you what to write in my diary, but of course, definitely. So you've got your goals. You've identified what's important to you. You know what you want in life. So how do you spend your week? Do you spend your week doing things that are important to you and things that are going to bring you towards your goal? Or do you look for every distraction you can find in life? What do people do? They look at their phone. They make calls, they take calls, they get on Facebook, they do all the things, and then they wonder why by the end of the week they feel frazzled and disillusioned and disappointed. If you identify what's important to you, and you know what your goal is, and then you have some long-term goals, and you have your weekly plan, then you give yourself every possible opportunity to get to where you want to get to, and you can hold your hands up and be accountable for your own life. The realization. If you realize your family is very important to you as a value, and you decide to plan your week working 14 hours a day for one reason or the other, and you end up feeling disillusioned by the end of the week, there's accountability. And I'm not suggesting that everyone's in a situation where some people do get caught up in that situation where they might need to do extra work and everything else. Everyone's in different circumstances. But what I would say in them situations are, as long as we're going forward, how many people do I meet who come in for sessions who aren't happy with their job, but they're doing nothing about it? Are they doing another course that can lead them to a new destination? Are they looking for a new job? No. The answer is no. But they end up on a Monday morning finding the time to write on Facebook, "It's Monday again. Dad, I hate Mondays." Well, you could have taken that time to send your CV off to a job. Does that not make sense? So why don't people do that? Why don't people take time to plan? Why don't they become a part of somebody else's plan? Everybody's different. Everybody's unique. But I think the key thing is stick to your plan. Be flexible in your planning. Be creative in your planning. And think as big as you want to think. What the heck? You've got one life, as far as I'm aware. So why not? What the heck? Who knows what's possible? If you're looking for inspiration, you can find a lot of inspiration. A lot of people out there that have gone on to do amazing things with the most challenging circumstances. Taking action. Being proactive. Being proactive and taking action is one of the most powerful resources we can have. I work with a number of people in business startups, so to speak. They have these weird and wonderful ideas, and they do everything other than take the action necessary to get to where they want to get to. Okay? They take time during the course of a day, speaking to their friends over the phone, in the chat rooms on Facebook, going to networking groups, networking with people who are in no position to make any decisions, and they wonder why at the end of the week and month and year they're none the wiser. Okay, so taking action, taking massive action, and going out there and saying, you know what, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all out. I'm going to give it everything that I've got. I'm going to go all out. Has anyone ever in the room ever set themselves a goal or a target and just gone all out to get that goal? But what was it like to go out there and just give it everything?
Scary.
Scary? Yeah?
Of course it does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Especially when I get right.
Yeah?
The actual planning of it is exciting, but then when you actually start the process,
Yeah.
it's very scary.
What was the process like when you first engaged in that process?
Scary.
Yeah. And you know what?
Apprehensive.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
what I wanted to do, it was where I wanted to be. And the beginning part was quite easy. Taking the first two steps was quite simple. But it was the other 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 that were a bit painful because it was like that.
Yeah.
But then you just wake up one morning and realise that, God, it's like a ka-ching moment. And you suddenly realise that you're nearly there, and then you're there.
Yeah. And what was it like to get there?
Like eating a rainbow. Because it's one of the things that it's like you dream.
Yeah.
You're not
You've
necessarily do.
No one can take it away from you.
No, but
Definitely.
you can just do it, and it's an action that's there, but it's not tangible.
Yeah. And I think that if goals that you set don't bring that element of fear, they're probably not powerful enough. And I can certainly relate to that in my experience. There's been times you get up in the early hours of the morning and think, have I set the right goal? Am I deluding myself going through this? The apprehension. We all do. We're all human. We all experience a range of emotions, definitely. Certainly. And when you set yourself big targets, big goals, then you're going to experience variable emotions that go with it as well. And that's when we grow and we challenge ourselves. And that's when we do achieve that goal. The buzz. Phenomenal. You can't put a price on that. You can't put a price on setting yourself a target and achieving that target and looking at the impact that target has made. It's a phenomenal opportunity. The last book I wrote, I had a target in my own mind. It was a challenge. I wanted the book to go to #1 in variable categories. And I worked hard. And it channeled my energy into writing a book that was going to talk about subjective experiences, how a lot of these processes work. And when I got there, it was a bust. All the work put into it, and looking back on it, and realising that goal was phenomenal. But it doesn't stop there. You carry on, you keep going forward, life goes on, we don't rest on our laurels. But generally speaking, when you set yourself a target, and you do achieve that target, it's phenomenal. That said, there has been times I've set goals in the past, and I haven't exactly got there. I fell short for one reason or the other, but it's taken me to a place I believe I needed to be. I embrace it, and I'm grateful for that. And I realise, if not at a time, later, that it took me to where I needed to be. And the journey is what counts. The journey, the day-to-day. Not necessarily a goal, the journey. When you reflect on that journey that took you to that goal, there's a lot of power in that journey. Someone climbs Mount Everest, fantastic achievement to get to the top of the mountain, fantastic views, but they're short-lived. When you reflect on what you did to get there and do what you've done, that's priceless. And no one can ever take that away from you. By going out then, you know, what people say is relative to them. You know, success to one person is one thing and somebody else is something else. Not everyone's got aspirations to do climb Mount Everest, but someone might have an aspiration to set a business up that gives them more freedom to spend time with their family. It's entirely up to them. It's their call, their choice. But if you don't do anything about it, things won't materialise in themselves. If you don't take action, you know, there's a lot of literature out there, and people talk about books about, you know, cosmic ordering and secrets and all that sort of stuff. In my experience, yes, it does enlighten your unconscious awareness because you're focusing on that. But in my experience, I've never sat down and meditated and someone drop a bag of money on my head. Or anyone's ever dropped a Ferrari off. It just doesn't happen. It takes work and sheer determination. Yes, I think there's a case for meditating and focusing and challenging your energy. If you don't get up and do something about it, it's unlikely. It's just going to present itself on its own. So taking action is key. And what I'm going to do is a quick exercise. Think of 2 things you can do. 2 things that you can do. You're not accountable to do them, but 2 things that you can do beyond this seminar that can take you towards a goal that you might have. Just 2 things could change the whole direction of your life. 1 phone call, 1 email, approach someone. Obviously you can have more than 2 things beyond this. But 2 things that you could do that you haven't already done that could make all the difference. And certainly in my experience, when I work with people, when they've put things into effect and they've gone out there, that's when changes happen. So think of 2 things that you can do. Is there someone you've been thinking about calling but not sure? An email you thought about sending, someone you thought about approaching? How did anyone feel about writing that down? Anybody feel any thoughts on taking steps?
I think that was very useful because I've got about 6 things I've got to do, but I need to do them.
Yeah. From the start, the beginning is always a good place to start. Definitely. Every 1,000-mile journey starts with its first step. You know, sometimes as overwhelming as something might be, the first step is key. Taking that first step is key. And certainly in my experience of working with people, I do a lot of work with people with medical conditions as well, things like fibromyalgia, adrenal fatigue, chronic fatigue. Has anyone ever heard about those syndromes before? I do a lot of work with people in that situation. And I see people who come along to me completely debilitated. Some of them can't even come to my premises because they're debilitated. I have to do session via Skype. I have to be very flexible and versatile. And it's really amazing how taking steps towards a positive outcome, taking the first steps to move forward. Some of the challenges I face with people in that situation are their belief about their situation. You know, certainly when I reflect on certain situations, I think about how I've managed to help people facilitate a gradual recovery program. And you look back, and certainly in my experience, you realise how people's perception, people's belief structure, all these things come into effect. Now, I'm not medically qualified. I don't profess to be, medical person. But one thing I do believe in is that if we take action, whatever it might be, and we change our beliefs, then gradually we can achieve a positive outcome. And certainly in my experience, of all the clients, one client really sticks in my mind, and she was only very young. She was told by, her words not mine, by a top consultant, she had fatigue syndrome, to accept what she had. That was it. Accept it. Could you imagine you're 14, 15 years of age, you've got the whole world ahead of her, you don't know what's hit you, you can barely get out of bed, and someone that you may as well see as a god, a consultant, says, you know what, nothing we can do. How do you think someone might feel in that situation? Yeah. Any other feelings you think they might feel? Yeah. And people talk about people in this industry and coaches setting up people to fail. Well, what do you think that consultant did in that situation? Great. Good advice, is it? Accept it? I don't know. It depends which way you look at it. When she came to me, I didn't set her up to fail. I didn't say anything otherwise. I said, let's just start from base. Let's take steps towards moving forward. In that environment, because of its success in the past, sometimes people think you've got this magic wand and this, that, and the other. But I don't sell it for anything other than what it is. It's just a gradual recovery program. And we started at the very beginning. And the beginning was for her to recognise and use these wins opportunities when she had energy to start doing things. And we used a number of techniques, some of which we've covered tonight, some we're covering in LP. But also, I used a physiological graded program. It was quite interesting, really, because her GP, her consultant, said to train through it. She'd end up being in bed for 3 or 4 weeks after she tried to train through it. And she said, what's my take on training through it? I said, listen to your body. Your body's shutting you down, it's telling you something. So grade it. And I use the metaphor. To use the metaphor, think of a mobile phone. When you put it on charge, you've got 10 bars for charge. If you go on to 8, have a rest. Stay above 8. Just relax. Keep yourself fresh. And then I got her to prioritise our values, what's important to you in life, and let's start building a life. Let's start doing things, whatever it might be, even if there's one thing in the course of a day that fulfills your values, you'll feel better about yourself. And gradually we'll see with a rotation. In 6 weeks, a girl that was completely debilitated for a very long time went through a major social event. She didn't think she'd get through. She got through that. She went away on holiday. She booked on. She's doing a course at college. She got back into training. And I give the consultant his due. He did write to me and say, and ask me for my thoughts about a component of the condition. And I didn't reply the best I could, saying that the key was herself gradually focusing on getting better and putting all the pieces together. And what price can you put on that from a coaching point of view? to see someone in a situation you mentioned earlier, seeing them completely debilitated, desperate and all sorts really, to getting their life back. Yeah, it wasn't life as we know it for some people, yet in saying that, in such a short space of time, we've continued to attempt to make progress and get somewhere, massive milestone, which is key. Yet I felt some of the barriers that were put in place that weren't even hers, and with the consultant saying that you're going to have to accept it and go away. What do people do sometimes? They go on the internet and start trawling for stories, and they didn't help as well, because you see negative stories as well. And I said, for every negative story you'll read, if you look for it, you'll find a positive story. So keep building that belief that it can be done, it's possible to be done, which is key. I think as a coach, for those of you in the coaching profession, the one thing that your clients will take a lot out of is your belief in them. I was driving the other day, listening to the radio, and there was a footballer talking on the radio about a potential manager going back to that football club, and they asked that player about what was one of the biggest ingredients of that managerial person's success, and that footballer said on the radio, it was his confidence he gave them and the belief he had in himself. It was infectious. So if someone comes to you and you've got belief in them as a coach, they've got a better chance of achieving their outcome. And personally, with all honesty, I'll be open with you and honest with you. If someone does a session with me, I always do a consultation prior to taking somebody on. If I don't think I can help the person move forward, then I'll be honest and tell them, I'm sorry, but I'm not the right person for you. But if I take someone on, I will move heaven and earth, and I will truly believe we can do something once we agree our outcomes, which are key. Very clear about outcomes. And we move towards the end of the seminar. What I'd like to do, and I mentioned earlier about the gratitude list. Some of you probably, anyone do a gratitude list? Anyone in the room actually do a gratitude list? One person, two people, three, a few people do a gratitude list. Okay, and what, for those of you who do a gratitude list, what your thoughts on the gratitude list?
It's uplifting.
Sorry?
I find it uplifting.
Uplifting, yeah. Definitely.
And it's just simple things
that
you're grateful for, just the everyday simple things that find uplifting and meaningful.
Yeah. Things like we mentioned earlier, sometimes certain things that we might even moan about, but hey, if they were taken away, we soon realise how much we miss them, whatever it might be, definitely. So take the time, even in a few moments, to write down the things that you're grateful for in your life, the most powerful emotion that you'll ever experience, the attitude of gratitude. If you can't think of anything, a good place to start is being alive. Not a bad gift to have. Getting up in the morning, priceless. We're not going to be here forever. Some people think they're going to be here forever, but they're not. Sorry to be the voice of doom and gloom. And you may as well make the most of who you are and appreciate what you've got. And take the moment to do that, the gratitude list. And as you write the list, the gratitude list, think about the things you're most grateful for. Could you put a price on them? Anybody? Probably not. When you realise how many people, maybe there's a few, I don't know, but how many people, when you ask them what they're most grateful for, have got a car or generally not, is it things that you couldn't put a price on? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the things that mean the most.
Precisely.
And it's when someone gives me some time.
Yeah.
I appreciate that more than I appreciate the gift of money.
Precisely. And it makes you wonder why, in the world that we live in today, and certainly there's plenty of motivational speakers out there you listen to and write stuff and coaches and all that sort of stuff, harp on about the car, the house, the yacht, which if you've got it, great. You know, good luck to you if that's what sort of gets you up in the morning. There's nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with having nice things. But sometimes when you focus on those outcomes, you sort of detract from the things that really matter in life. the things that really matter in life that you couldn't put a price on, that sometimes we can take for granted, and get caught up in this treadmill that we call life. We talked about earlier, you get caught up in that treadmill and you think, okay, if I have that, it's going to equate to this, and if I've got that, which is good to have, but I would say there's certain things that you can't put a price on. Priceless. And as I mentioned earlier, until the prospect of it being taken away, if it is taken away, sometimes we realise the true value. And sometimes it's worth thinking when you do graduate school is, how would I feel if I didn't have that? How would I feel if I didn't have that? And by doing that, you begin to realise, you know what? I'm going to seize the day here. I'm going to make the most of every situation I've got, which I suppose come tomorrow, midday, when you've got deadlines at work and you've got your boss blowing in one ear and you've got emails coming through here, you get caught up in the thick of things. It's easy to lose sight of all that. It's easy. Does anyone ever do that where you sort of think, well, you get caught up in the things of life? And that's when it's worth taking a deep breath. Things are okay. I'm in a good place. There's a lot of good things to look forward to. Because that's probably the most healthiest emotional experience. Better than Prozac. Definitely. So I'm not suggesting people don't take a meditation, but that emotion that's released when we're experiencing gratitude is a lot more powerful than a lot of emotions that you can go to a GP. Take that. And I would be safe to say that in my experience, many of my clients who have come to me with conditions like depression and other stuff as well, they've realised, you know what, they're actually not depressed. They're fine. They're okay. I'm working with one client who said he had depression for many, many years, 20 years. It was only by off chance. His mum has been on a course. Can you see my son? He's got this depression. Had it for 20 years. What can you do with it? He comes along, and by the end of it, by the end of our free session, I'm not advocating anyone do this, but he threw his medicine away. And he told me months later, he said, you know what? I'm not actually depressed. I'm fine. So we get caught up in this label. We get caught up in this label. And when we start labeling ourselves, think about what it would be like to walk around the streets with a label on your head. Okay, nobody's thinking anything else otherwise until you sort of conform to that label. And like I said to my client at the time, because when he was telling me in the height, telling me his experience of depression, he told me that he struggled at times to be happy and make sense of certain things. And I said, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. What do you mean? I said, if you told me that you were happy every second of every day, I'd call the psychiatrist and get you locked up, because that's mental illness for me. If anyone can be happy for every second of every day, then you've got seriously mental issues, because life isn't about that. To have night, you need day. So sometimes you've got to embrace all emotions. There's nothing wrong with having fear. There's nothing wrong with being sad. There's nothing wrong with experiencing all the course of various emotions. What is a problem if you're debilitated and you stay there? If you're a miserable so-and-so every second of every day, then you might have a few issues. But if you sort of recognise it and realise all emotions are, for want of a better word, almost like a warning signal for you to take some sort of action and make some sort of changes, then you can embrace it and use them to full effect. Okay. What I'd like to do now is open things up a little bit. Any questions? Any comments? Anything that we've covered so far? Anyone got anything that's covered Bradley? Yep.
I'm not sure. I'm having some thoughts around the value of planning, keeping diaries and stuff versus maybe, or in relation to being spontaneous and living in the moment.
Yeah.
And what happens when we're too busy making plans and then other things happen.
Yeah. I think it's a balance. I think it's whatever works for you. I think there are equally as many people who are happy doing either or. What I would say is if you do take stock and do take the time to work out what's important to you and do navigate your life according to that, you give yourself every chance to achieve a positive outcome. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's possible also to be spontaneous and do take life as it comes or anything else, and that could work for some people if they can do that automatically. But there's also the case of some people living in ignorant bliss. Neither here or there. The comfort zone. They're neither up here, they're neither down there, they're somewhere in the middle. Until eventually, bang, they wake up one morning and think, what the hell am I doing? So I'm not saying one thing is right or wrong. Some people are happy doing one thing, one the other. But what I would say is that if you can sit down and be accountable for where you are and where you want to be, then you can also hold your hands up and say, you know what, I'm doing what I can. I don't profess to have all the answers. I don't profess to have the answers that you need. I don't profess that all this stuff is going to take you from where you want to be. But what I will do, one thing's for sure, is help you realise what is important to you. And if you're not doing what's important to you, what do you think happens? If you're not living your life based on what's important to you, how do you think you're going to start feeling? Yeah. Anything else? Yeah. Sorry? Potentially, yeah. If you live your life in a way, or as much as you can do, based on what's important to you, how do you think your life feels? Yeah. Maybe more balanced. Possibly. You've got more control over your outcome. Anything else?
Jim, going back to the gratitude list, do you see any value in appreciating before we've actually received it, like in the law of attraction?
Do I see any value in?
Yeah, you know, in law of attraction, you kind of find, you know, if you want a new car or you want that job, you kind of being grateful before you've actually received it. It's like the law of attraction. Everybody's heard of that?
Okay. So, any value?
Yeah, it's just the expression that to be always grateful, really, but you're always grateful to the thought that you're giving out, that that's what you want, before you actually get it.
And I think it goes back to what you want. I think fulfilling the emotion.
Yeah.
If I stand here and tell you I'm grateful for Ferrari outside and Angelina Jolie waiting for me outside, is that going to happen? Am I pushing? Are you trying to say to do it? You're probably right. Yeah. I think that anyone that knows me well enough knows my thoughts on the attraction. I think there is a case for having that positive energy and giving yourself every chance. But as I said earlier, I think if we don't take action, I think more importantly, find the emotion that is linked to the outcome you're looking for. There is more than one way to be fulfilled. I think it's very likely if you're expecting a car or anything materially to make you feel any better. Has anyone ever bought a new car and thought, great, buzz, and then a week later, spill the coffee and not give it to something? Yeah. So I suppose trying to get fulfillment from materialism is like trying to patch, trying to put a band-aid over an open wound. You're cutting your jugular and putting a band-aid over it. It's only going to work very minimally. It's just stopgap. It's great having all that. And I think the challenge is now to take some of what we've learned tonight, practically by yourself and with your clients as well, work on it. If you have a card, your details, the email, you can write it down, and I'll be more than happy to email you some resources as well that can help contribute toward your ongoing journey. If you've got any questions about the course that you're doing, as Sarah said, do email her in the early hours tonight. She'll respond. Now, if you speak to us, and I'm happy to guide anybody. That's right. Work through the old hours. I'd like to thank everybody for coming along, and I look forward to chatting to you throughout the course of this evening. We'll chat about anything, but it's been a great evening. Thank you.